Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 142. Yes, we are still climbing up that ladder to whatever number we're going to reach. I'm delighted to bring you episode 142. It's great to be back with you this week. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. And/or if you're watching this on Facebook, that's the other way you can watch these podcasts. If you haven't already, please like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. You can be kept updated about what we're doing that way as well. I appreciate the fact that we've got a very large global audience now, and we have devotees and non-devotees, whatever that means, tune in from all over the world to listen to, not listen to me, hopefully, to listen to our guests. We've had such a huge range of guests over the last 3.5 years. It's been remarkable, and I feel very honored to have met each and every one of them. And this week's edition, it's probably going to be another groundbreaking edition. We've got a big topic we're going to be discussing this evening. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest this week. It's Dhira Govinda Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Narada Prabhu. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be with you.
No worries. It's great to have you with us. Now, those people watching and or listening who have been following this podcast since the beginning might remember that Dhira Govinda Prabhu has been a previous guest on this podcast. He actually appeared on episode 16 back in June 2021. This podcast was very much in its infancy at that time. And it was a wonderful, very important conversation we had that day, I remember, with Saraswati, who's a fantastic child protection campaigner in the United States. And I remember that podcast very well because that was, I think, the first time I'd covered a big topic. And I remember feeling quite nervous, but it went very well. And so Dhira Govinda has returned 136 episodes later. And actually, he's only the fourth person to appear twice. Um,
I'm honored that you've invited me again. Thank you.
no worries. It's a very small elite group. What are those four are? I get them all in a room together. What are their stories? Okay, so Dhira Govinda Prabhu, let's start with. So this podcast is quite different. Normally, I joke around a bit. I ask the guests where they're from and blah, blah, blah. But we're not going to do that this time necessarily because we've got a really important topic to discuss. Um, and so just so we can kind of set the scene, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, can you tell us a little bit about you and your historical involvement with the International Society for Krishna Consciousness?
Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay. Well, I first started going to a ISKCON center in State College, Pennsylvania in 1980, and I was going just for the prasadam. And the center was run by a very nice Prabhu named Stambadas Prabhu, and he and I are still in contact. So he's like my Vartma Pradarshak guru. And literally, I calculated over a period of 3 years, I consumed more than 1,000 plates of prasadam before I chanted one round of japa. I would just go week after week, and then I got enough purification, and then in the summer of 1983, after I got my Bachelor's of Science degree, I backpacked around Europe on a URL pass, and that's when I started chanting 16 rounds per day. During that summer, I read Bhagavad Gita as it is, cover to cover. Actually, I stopped for about 2 weeks at Villa Vrindavan outside Florence, and I read Bhagavad Gita cover to cover. I actually joined an ISKCON Bhakti Yoga ashram in Ra'anana. That's a small town outside of Tel Aviv, Israel. So interestingly, I joined the Hare Krishna movement in the Middle East, and I've served in different capacities. I was served as temple president of ISKCON Tel Aviv. And later, I led a book distribution team in like Arab and Druze villages. My first book is entitled Krishna, Israel, and the Druze, an Interreligious Odyssey. And fast forwarding a bit, we came back to the United States in 1991, 92. I have two children who are both now in their 30s, just as far as that part of my life, two children who are in their 30s. And they're both practicing sadhaka bhakti. My daughter is Sita, my son is Abhimanyu. And so in 1995, the community asked me to serve on the board of directors of ISKCON New Raman Reti, that's ISKCON of Alachua. And starting in 1996, I accepted the role to be chairperson of the board of directors. Even at that time, 30 years ago, ISKCON New Raman Reti was already the largest community of devotees in North America. So I served on that board for about 7 years. In 1998, the ISKCON GBC asked me to establish the ISKCON Central Office of Child Protection. So I did that. That was kind of my services there were the main topic of our interview, our podcast three years ago. I served as director of the Child Protection Office for about 6 years, for more than 6 years into 2004. I got my PhD in 1999. My PhD dissertation title is Effects of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on Stress, Depression, and the Three Gunas. So we applied social service research methods into studying the effects of chanting, and I'm with various other devotees. I'm involved. I'm still involved in research and writing about that to some extent, and yeah, right. So yeah, so going there into the 90s, early 2000s, I actually was serving in a lot of positions in the ISKCON organization. I mentioned a few of them, Child Protection Office, and I was going to Mayapur every year for the GBC meetings, and had chairperson of the board of directors of ISKCON of Alachua, and I was serving on lots of educational boards of directors. And for various reasons, I was finding myself each year of my life, I find myself more and more enthusiastic to try to follow Prabhupada and to inspire others to read Prabhupada's books and chant Hare Krishna. And also I was definitely finding, as the years went on there into the 90s, early 2000s, I was more and more discouraged, even I could use heavier words than discouraged, at the thought of bringing people to the institution calling itself ISKCON. And in one sense, I was ISKCON. I had lots of positions. And so more and more as years went into early 2000s and into the mid 2000s, more and more my services, I gave up my services that were directly connected with the organization, and my services were and are just endeavoring to serve Prabhupada's movement in different ways that are not intrinsically connected with the organization. I have many, many, many friends and associates that I serve closely with and that I admire and appreciate very much, who identify as members of the ISKCON organization. I identify myself as an aspiring follower of Srila Prabhupada, an aspiring practitioner of Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna.
Wow, that was a bit of a whirlwind overview of the last 44 years.
44 years, yeah.
What a number, 44. But I have read your well, I've read your biography. I've read your information on various places online, and yeah, Tel Aviv must have been a place to serve in. Tel Aviv, not just because of what's happening now, but just historically. Imagine preaching in a place like the Middle East or Israel was always an experience. It's probably the best way to put it.
Every day was a special adventure serving, endeavoring to serve the Sankirtan movement in that part of the world. Every day was an amazing adventure, often thrilling, often scary. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, you set up the original Child Protection Office in ISKCON. Um, we talked about that in our last podcast all those years ago, and I think it's great that a lot of people know that you've done that. You've also appeared on other podcasts too, and people are aware of the important role that you've played, I guess, in the kind of history of ISKCON in terms of taking on that role. Um, we might come back to that a bit back to that later on, child protection. Because today we're talking about something a little bit different, but there might be a bit of a link, but quite different.
Mhm.
Um, can you tell us about the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation? What is the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation? Why was it established, and what are its aims and objectives?
Okay. Yeah, we established, well, I'll say, Naveen Krishna Das Prabhu, he kind of has been um, leading the way in many respects towards endeavoring to reveal the truth about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. And he and I, with the support of many others, earlier this year, we established the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation to to reveal the truth about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. I'll speak for I have perceived for about 27 years now that in regards to that pastime of Srila Prabhupada, of course, all of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes are transcendental and auspicious. Of course, in regards to the disappearance pastime, there seems to have been, and for me, it's stronger than seems to, for me, it's like it's clear there's been a lot of, from the institution, concealment, bluff, cover up, denial. It seems like that. And so we established a legal nonprofit to move forward the efforts to reveal like what really happened with Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. And I'll say it's, well, maybe interesting in a way because I established this kind of child protection office with the state of Florida. I've served a lot in child protection back in the 90s, early two. I was a children family counselor in the Department of Foster Care and like that. So, I've done a lot with child protection over the course of my life. At the same time, I was really not the one who advocated for child protection or child abuse or cover up of child abuse issues connected with ISKCON to be intrinsically part of the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation. There was others who were kind of collaborating with the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation. Others like leading personalities in the field in the field of law, in the field of forensics, and in just researching what happened around the disappearance pastime. They came to know, including from communicating with me, the so much child abuse in the history of ISKCON, and maybe even more very worrisome is the systemic institutional cover up and practically encouragement of the child maltreatment. And they really were saying we need to do something about this. So that's also an integral part of the mission of the foundation.
Wow, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I guess for some context as to how this podcast is happening today, it was only, I think, a week ago that a letter went out to hundreds, I assume hundreds of ISKCON leaders, GBC members, temple presidents, and project managers around the world, from yourself and Naveen Krishna Prabhu, who's another long-serving devotee in the movement, informing the recipients, us here at the Hare Krishna Project, we received it too, informing us that new information and evidence had come to light, or has come to light, which indicates that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned, which led to his physical departure from the world. I guess for me, I've been around the movement for about 20 years in this life, and I probably heard about uh, the rumors of Prabhupada's possible poisoning at least 10 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
But, being super busy with my seva, I just ignored it and got on with what I was doing. And I guess also I didn't really want to think about it. I didn't want to think about what that meant. So I guess for kind of historical context, before we kind of really dig deep and go over the contents of the letter and a lot of the things we're going to go over in this interview, can you tell us a bit about the history of the rumors, if I can use that word, the history of the rumors of Srila Prabhupada being poisoned?
Sure. And just to preface that, you mentioned Naveen Krishna Prabhu, yeah. So he's been serving Srila Prabhupada's movement since the early 1970s, so more than 50 years. He served as temple president in Detroit, in Dallas. In the early 90s, the ISKCON GBC asked him to serve as the GBC minister for finances and management, which he did until he did for several years, and then he resigned from the GBC. The main reason being is he was seeing how the ISKCON leadership was dealing or not dealing with integrity or honesty about facts regarding Srila Prabhupada's disappearance past time. So sure. So basically the rumors that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned started in 1997. That's not completely true, because after I became more informed, I realized even since 1977, there were little rumors here and there. I've run into followers of Prabhupada who say, yeah, they left the movement right there, late 77, 78, because they knew what happened. I've run into a few like that. But basically, these rumors were not widespread. But it's not like there were no rumors even back to November 77. But they became widespread. Some recordings came out on the internet in 1997. And pretty quickly it went viral. I think that's the term. And lots of devotees were listening to it. I'll share personally, Narada Prabhu. At that time, one of my roles, I was serving as a chairperson of the board of directors of New Raman Reti. And it was already quite a big, thriving, blossoming community. And so the rumors were coming out on the internet. And because basically some recordings with whispers in the back about poison, and okay, that's what was happening. And I also, I did not take it seriously. I assumed there was no credibility to any of that. And I remember after at least one morning program, it was more than one morning program now that I think about it, late 1997, and devotees would come to me because I was serving in a leadership position, and they would say, "Dhira Govinda, you heard these rumors, internet." And I remember telling them, I said, well, I'm assuming there's no validity to these rumors that Prabhupada was given poison. I'm assuming it's not credible, because that was true for me. So just, yes, I was doubtful and skeptical, maybe even a little cynical that it could possibly be true. So for those who are thinking, that can't be true, I empathize with that. That was me when I first heard about it. And then, okay, a little bit later, maybe 2 weeks later, a little later into 97, our family, we we hosted at we were actually living on the New Ramanreti farm community property because I had a lot of services connected with ISKCON. We ho we oh we hosted Ambarish Prabhu and his wife Svaha Prabhu. Their two daughters were about the age of our children, and we hosted them at our home. And the children were playing, and our wives were speaking. And then Ambarish and I were in our living room, and Ambarish mentioned about these rumors about the poisoning. And I said to him, I said, yeah, I'm assuming there's no credibility to such things. And he said, no, 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 we should take this seriously. And he said to me, so you're a leader in this community. You should regard that this is a weighty issue. You should regard this, with gravity like that. So that was the first time, I heard a devotee who I knew personally, who I trusted and had, solid respect for, who said, no, no, there might be something to this. So I was like, oh, okay. So I would say at that, maybe my belief that something happened went from like 0.1% to maybe 5-10%, something like that. So then I started looking into it. I started looking into it, and oh, okay. I listened to the recordings and I read the articles, it was, and at that time, there, late 90s, I was on all the GBC conferences. I was going to the international GBC meetings, North American. So one thing I noticed is that in those years, me personally, was that like anything coming from GBC ISKCON leadership about the disappearance pastime, to me, it really seemed like evasive, bluff, smoke and mirrors. In the year 2000, I read their book, Not That I Am Poison. And by that time, I was also, serving as director of the International Child Protection Office, which was quite an influential office at that time. And like it really seemed to me like there doesn't like it seemed more like propaganda rather than wanting truth. So kind of the more I got like the propaganda, like there's no evidence that Prabhupada was poisoned. And if you think otherwise, you'll be ridiculed and vilified. I mean, like maybe I'm exaggerating, but maybe I'm not. Like it was really like that. And maybe it's still like that. And then the more I got that, then I was like, well, if there's so much effort, it seems like they have something to hide. So that kind of increased my suspicion. Well, I went to the international GBC meetings 4 years in a row, 99 through 2002. In the year 2000, I was at the GBC meetings in my capacity as Child Protection Office Director, New Ramanreti Chairperson. Also, I was conducting, maybe you've heard of the Sattva Tov seminars, the Transformative Communication seminars. So I was conducting a lot of leadership and communication skills seminars, all based on Prabhupada's teachings in Mayapur those years, for his kind of leadership and brahmacharis and congregation members. Just that was also something I did in India when I visited those years. And so the GBC had a presentation about the disappearance pastime. And I was there. And I was like, I regard myself as pretty stoic. But I was like nauseous. I was like moved because like the hope, it just had this like full propaganda feel. And my sense of what was happening in the room, I'll use it, it felt like a sort of dark, macabre, sad, scary, drunken spectacle. I was there. That's my impression, my subjective perception. And it was like, yeah, like all of the Maharajas and Prabhus and Matajis in the room. Maybe not all, but practically all. They were just, there was this like uproarious laughter that just seemed really disconnected and inappropriate and just, and I just see like, there seemed to be no commitment to facts. And it was just like this, okay, now we're going to vote that there's no evidence whatsoever that Prabhupada was poisoned, right? Yeah. And it was, and just like everyone, like my sense is if we were to do a freeze frame and like ask practically anyone there, like, okay, right now you're laughing hysterically. What is it you're laughing about? Like, I don't think anyone could say. It just seemed like this, like everyone was like intoxicated, maybe driven by a few behind the scenes. When I walked out of there, uh, my skepticism that, okay, maybe there's a 20% chance that something very sinister happened in November 77. It was up to like 50, 60%. Just a bit more context, Narada Prabhu. So in 1997, and we allude to this in Naveen Krishna and I, in our September 16th, 2024 letter, 1997, the GBC appointed Balavanta Prabhu to be the investigator about the poison allegations, right? And so he did that. And GBC gave him a little, I don't know, a few $1,000s, and he did some investigation. He came out with a report, and the report was saying, well, the results are inconclusive. Further investigation requiring further funding will be necessary. My impression is that that's not the response that the GBC wanted. So what the GBC did is, without telling Balavanta, they removed him from the investigator position, and they formed a new investigative team without telling Balavanta. And this new investigative team, just for some dark humor here, the new investigative team, the chief investigator was a disciple of one of the main murder suspects. The organizer of the investigation was a disciple of another main suspect. And the funder of the whole thing was himself a third main suspect of the homicidal poisoning. Just putting that out there in case maybe there was some bias and partiality. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just cynical. Could be me, you know? So then that new investigative team came out with their presentation at the year 2000 GBC meetings. And again, Balavanta didn't even know he was removed from the case. They just stopped communicating with him. And the new investigative team came out with this surprise result that there's no evidence whatsoever to indicate that Prabhupada was poisoned. Okay, everyone agree to that? Raise your hand. Yeah. Well, so that's some context. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. And that actually does lead us nicely on to the next question, because you alluded to a letter just now, the letter that last week, so dated the 16th of September 2024, was sent out last week to hundreds of leaders, representatives in the ISKCON community around the world, a letter from yourself and Naveen Krishna Prabhu. Can you now tell us about the letter in terms of its contents? What message have you, over the last 7 days, sent out to the leaders of the ISKCON world and its members?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I have the letter here, but I've been absorbed in it, so I probably don't even need to reference my files much. Yeah, so the contents are to support and encourage followers, well-wishers, and and supporters of Srila Prabhupada and his movement, and really the whole world, even if someone isn't a well-wisher and supporter, just for the whole world to help raise awareness about facts and truth regarding Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. That's that's the main thing. And then we go into some detail, just just a little bit, because we didn't want the letter to become too voluminous. But we go into some of the basic areas. You know, in the brief context I gave, I kind of brought you up to like early 2002. Well, there's been a whole lot of additional potent forensic investigation that's brought out a whole lot more evidence that Srila Prabhupada was homicidally poisoned. Now, I just want to, philosophically, we understand that all of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes are pastime. When I said Prabhupada was murdered, he was homicidally poisoned. Okay, that's why in the writing, I'm usually using terms like Srila Prabhupada was given poison with homicidal intent. So Srila Prabhupada's departure, it's a co-creation between him and Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, just like Bhishma Dev had so many arrows shot through him. But we know it's not that the arrows killed Bhishma Dev, or we know that if Jesus wanted to not be crucified, he could have co-created something with God to not be crucified. So it's a disappearance pastime. At the same time, to follow up on that point, so even though it's a pastime, it doesn't mean that those who hammered in the nails on the cross were pure devotees. Okay, so there could be so many involved in the pastime that they're not on that transcendental platform. So we understand Krishna and Srila Prabhupada created Srila Prabhupada leaving at his own sweet will for reasons, some of which we might be able to conceive, some of which not. So we know that it's pastime. Still, that's why I say that the evidence from what I've seen and from what many have seen, the conclusion from the evidence seems unmistakably clear that Srila Prabhupada was given poison with homicidal intent. And so our letter, September 16th, was to provide kind of some of the major categories of evidence that, with a little bit of detail to at least encourage people to apply your hearts and intelligence to this pastime of Srila Prabhupada.
Mm, mm. And before I get on to ask about the evidence, which I'd like to discuss in some detail, what I really appreciated as someone from kind of a Western background, kind of raised in a Christian culture,
Yeah,
I really appreciated the comparison of Srila Prabhupada's the pastime of his departure, comparing it to Jesus's
yeah,
departure, and how most of us from a Christian background, we recognize that Jesus was sent to earth to
yeah.
die for our sins. So even though the death of someone physically is a very sad thing and a very troublesome thing, but actually it was part of God's plan. You know, and a Christian
Yeah.
would say, well, actually, there's joy in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You know, so I actually quite valued. I think it was in the letter.
It was. Yeah.
You used the pastime as Jesus's crucifixion as a comparison. I find that really useful as someone from a
Mhm.
Christian background.
Sure.
As part of an overall theological plan of God or Krishna or the divine. Um, okay, so let's now talk about the evidence. What new information has come to light? Um, I mean, new is also a relative term. What new information has come to
Yeah.
light that backs up those historical views that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned? Um, uh, and I think now is a good chance, if you can, to share details of the audio file, which I'm going to link with this podcast, and
Okay.
also the forensic report. So now's a chance for you to discuss the evidence that everyone's been shown.
Thank you, Narity. And first of all, I thank you for mentioning how that was moving and inspiring for you, that we mentioned about the comparison to Jesus and the crucifixion pastime. As for me, that's affirmation that to include that. And there's a conversation with Srila Prabhupada in Bombay, February 1977. And Srila Prabhupada specifically says in that conversation, he said that Christianity, the movement of Jesus, it was very small and insignificant until like his disappearance pastime, the crucifixion got known. The crucifixion got known. So, and now my conjecture, I don't know what's happening in Prabhupada's thought process, of course, but Vaishnava Kriya Mudra. Yeah, like my sense is, well, later in 77, Srila Prabhupada had made it very clear again and again that he knew he was being poisoned with homicidal intent. But my sense is, even from February 77, he knew, and he was giving an indication that just like Jesus's disappearance pastime was really the key for the movement of Christianity to spread powerfully far and wide. And so similarly, my emphasis here, my focus, it's not intrinsically about this one did that, we hate those who did it. Just like if we think of Jesus and the crucifixion, the focus isn't like those damn Romans who hammered in the nails or Judas betrayed. The focus is the inconceivable mercy and compassion, inconceivable godly qualities of Jesus. So similarly, I know the more that I learn about Prabhupada's disappearance pastime, I'm more and more deeply awed and inspired by Srila Prabhupada. And I'm trusting that whether amongst those who regard themselves as aspiring followers of Srila Prabhupada or those who've never heard of Srila Prabhupada, as the truth about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime becomes more and more known, more and more of the world are going to be so awed and inspired by Srila Prabhupada and want to support his mission. So, and I'll mention, even going back to 1997, and that's the time where I was incredulous that such a thing could have happened. Devotees would approach me in Alachua, do you think there's validity to these rumors? I go, no, I don't think there's validity. So even in that time, sometimes devotees would say, yeah, and Srila Prabhupada couldn't have been poisoned because he's a pure devotee. Like he wasn't protected. So even back when I didn't think that these rumors had validity, but even then, that never made sense to me. Like Krishna and the pure devotee, they can create a departure pastime of crucifixion, or a departure pastime through a disease, or a heart attack, or a bed of arrows. So why couldn't they co-create a disappearance pastime through a homicidal poisoning? So even when I didn't think it was credible, that never made sense to me, because Krishna and the pure devotees are capable to create all varieties of disappearance pastimes for their purposes. So, well, one thing is, okay, yeah, so yeah, as you said, new is relative. So new information as opposed to what was available in 1977, 1997, 2002. Yeah, so, okay, well, one thing is relatively new. So that Dr. J. Stephen Morris, he was the research, I think his exact title was senior researcher, maybe research director. He was a senior researcher with the MURR, the University of Missouri Research Reactor. Now, the University of Missouri, somehow or other, the most sophisticated and respected and established nuclear research reactor of any university in the United States is based in the University of Missouri. And so Dr. J. Stephen Morris, he was like the senior researcher there, and he researched several samples of Srila Prabhupada's hair clippings, some from 77, multiple samples from 1977, and some from before 77. And the hair samples from before 77 had normal average levels of cadmium like we might find in your hair clippings or my hair clippings. And the hair samples from 1977 had astronomically high levels of cadmium. Um, uh, like on average about 25,000% above average, 250 times above average. Meaning not like, oh, like 10 or 20% more than average, or no, twice as much as average. No, 250 times, 25,000%. And again, the hair samples from Srila Prabhupada from pre-77 were normal levels. Okay, there's lots of places we could go here, but one is, so then the Truth Labs Forensic Services, this Truth Labs Forensic Services, this was established about 17 years ago by Dr. Gandhi in India. Dr. Gandhi, for decades before that, for decades, like for more than 50 years, Dr. Gandhi has been serving in forensic sciences in India for the government for like 35, 37 years. The details are in his profile. His profile is linked to the letter. So it's like this Truth Labs Forensic Services. This is like if the top court, the Supreme Court or the High Court of Delhi, if they want like an expert witness in the field of forensic science, the Dr. Gandhi and his associates will be like the first ones they call on, just to get, like the credibility here. And so Dr. Gandhi and his team, I'll say they've spent hundreds, maybe thousands. They've spent at least hundreds of hours just on the audio files, which have been provided by the BBT archives. Also, the BBT archives audio files, the technology and the clarity from that technology of the audio is much at a much higher level in the 2020s compared to the 1990s or early 2000s. So that's new. And then, so Truth Labs, headed by Dr. Gandhi, has spent hundreds of hours on the audio files and a whole lot more on the toxicology evidence, like Dr. J. Stephen Morris with the Missouri Institute reactor, and Dr. Gandhi and his team, they've found that between the hair analysis, the toxicology, the audio forensic analysis, and other things, medical forensic analysis, meaning Srila Prabhupada showing symptoms. Srila Prabhupada's symptoms are completely consistent with cadmium poisoning, whereas there are other guesses at the cause of Prabhupada's death. And again, we understand death, it's pastime of departure. Other assertions or claims explain some of the symptoms, but the cadmium poisoning explains everything. So Dr. Gandhi and his team studied the toxicology evidence, the audio forensic evidence, and their conclusion is linked to our letter, and that we just provided a 6-page summary. They have their reports are dozens, probably hundreds of pages, because like just the spectrograph just to analyze like 30 seconds of audio, you get a whole lot of scientific output from that, so we didn't include all that in the letter or the links. But their conclusion, Truth Labs, is that it's it's unavoidably clear, completely clear that Srila Prabhupada was given poison, with the main toxin being cadmium, with homicidal intent, meaning not just some accidental because of side effects of Ayurvedic medicine or massage oil. So so that's there you go. That's a start.
Thank
Well,
you. Um,
I want to close that part with one more thing. The ISKCON GBC's stance, just in the context of origin, the ISKCON GBC's official resolution, their official stance as we speak here on September 24th, 2024 now, the GBC stance is there is no evidence, zero, no evidence, zero, that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned. Zero, none. Hare Krishna.
and thank you, Prabhu, for that. Really insightful information. And with this podcast, I will share a link to the forensic report. So actually, I will just put largely the link to the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation website, which has all the information on there. It's a fantastic website, by the way. It's got everything that anyone needs to know about this particular piece of work that yourself and Naveen Krishna Prabhu and others have done. Can we talk a bit about now about the audio file? Um, uh, what is the audio file? How long is it? If someone listens to the audio file, what will they hear?
Okay, thanks. Okay, it's about 22, 23 minutes, 22 and a half minutes, something like that. It's produced by Truth Labs Forensic Services. It's like, my understanding is that they're no, they've dealt with like thousands of murder cases. So this isn't just like there's some guy in his garage who has some headset, and like they're just like top experts. Dr. Gandhi, and he was trained at Quantico, the FBI training center. Okay, so they've dealt with thousands, probably tens of thousands of murder cases. So they're very experienced, to put it mildly. So basically, it's the files of different experts, different excerpts from this book, Conversations with Srila Prabhupada, volume 36, volume 36. Okay. Conversation with Srila Prabhupada. This is from the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. Okay. And this it's a 37 volume set. And I know even back when I was in Israel in the 1980s and then early 90s, when Prabhupada's letters got published by the BBT, I started reading through all his letters. Reading Prabhupada's books is my favorite thing to do. And supplementing that, reading Prabhupada's letters, transcribed lectures. And so I started reading Conversations from the first volume in 1965 or 66. And so this is just some rumors on the internet. This is a BBT book, and I don't know if they print it anymore because now everything's digital and online, like that. But so different excerpts from this volume, and the conversations are there. They're recorded. The recordings are provided by the BBT archives, and yeah, and so and then some of those conversations. I was in 1997. Some of those seem to have some whispers. Are they whispering about poisoning? So now Truth Labs, they've gone into it like with just top level professional analysis. I mean, their analysis gets into the nuance and the subtlety and the detail, and they confirm with voice print analysis, top levels spectroscopy, and they go, yeah, okay, here's the conversation, here's the whispers. For many of one thing they are revealing and discovering in this 22-minute whispers that were not decipherable by the naked ear or even a good headset back in 97. But with the new technology of the BBT, the new technology of truth labs, new means most modern, advanced, sophisticated, they've detected whispers that were not previously decipherable. And even not just with an ear, but even with the technology of 10 or 15 years ago. And so there's whispers there, and the conversations, whispers, and with voice print analysis, because all of those named as suspects in the legal opinion attached to the September 16th, 2024 letter, their voices are very clear. They've all given lots of lectures, so Truth Labs could make identification and very precise voice print matching, and they detected clear whispers like the poison's going down, is the poison in the milk, and other whispers about poison, while some of those who were close with Srila Prabhupada at that time and serving as his caregivers, they're giving him milk while there's whisper in the background. Is the poison in the milk? The poison's going down. Yes, yes. So they decipher it very clearly, and they bring it out, and that's why we recommended in the letter we recommended in listening to that, like, be focused, meaning that we're not distracted by email or this or that, like focus in, best, whatever one's best hearing device or whatever, headset like that, and to be with them. And so so now I'll say, because I mentioned that back in 97 I thought I was encouraged, oh, there's no chance this could have happened. Then I mentioned that when I see what was coming from the GBC, that it seemed like bluff, lies, deception, concealment. So I think, well, if they have nothing to hide, how come there's no straightforwardness here? Now, one of the things, because like back then I read closely those conversations from volume 36, and one thing I noticed back then, and that was before, I had even reasonable doubt, that maybe Prabhupada was poisoned. But it's very clear, and this is even without the whispers narrative. Just one can just read, whether the book or online, one can just read. It's one can just read there. Okay, that Srila Prabhupada is experiencing mental distress. Of course, all of Prabhupada's thoughts and feelings are transcendental, so it's not like our mundane, emotions. Like, yeah, there's one excerpt of conversation. One can, even without the Hindi and Bengali translations, but just from the English. And that was clear to me in 1997, just from the English. With the Hindi and Bengali translations, everything becomes even more clear that Prabhupada knew he was being given poison with murderous intent. But even just reading the English, there's one where Prabhupada's he's experiencing mental distress, and they're speaking in Hindi, maybe Bengali. I think it's Hindi. Yeah, and then Tamal Krishna Goswami, he asked Bhakti Charu Swami, what is Prabhupada saying? What's Prabhupada saying? Because Prabhupada wasn't speaking in English at that time. Okay. And so Bhakti Charu Swami says in English to everyone there, Tamal Krishna is there, Bhavananda Prabhu, and the Kavi Raj and others. So Bhakti Charu Swami says very clear, and this is right there in the English in the book, volume 36. He says, Prabhupada saying experiencing mental distress because he's being poisoned. And it's very clear, just from reading the English, that when they're talking about poisoning, they're talking about murder by poison. Again, just in the conversations, meaning, okay, maybe also they're talking about possible side effects of medication or something. Importantly, if we read those conversations, they're talking about Jayapataka Swami and Tamal Krishna Goswami, Bhavananda. They're talking with Prabhupada about an acharya from a Shankaracharya Mat who was given poison by a disciple, murder. They're talking about a lawyer in Calcutta who murdered his wife by poison. So no, they're just talking about side effects and medic. Then how come they're talking about all these murder cases? They're talking about Rakshasas who murder people by poison. It's right there in the English and even more elaborated if we get the Hindi translation. So everyone there at that time, Tamal Krishna Goswami says, Prabhupada's saying he's being murdered by poison. And Tamal Krishna Goswami says, sheesh. And others around, like, oh, so they're all talking, they know, they're saying Prabhupada's being murdered by poison. So this is on the audio, it's in the book. So then, interestingly for me, fast forward 20 years, in 1997, when the rumors came out on the internet, so those who were suspected, several of them, they wrote statements, which was included in the GBC's book, not that I am poison. They wrote statements that it's completely absurd and ridiculous, ludicrous to think that Prabhupada was deliberately given poison. That's ridiculous, absurd. Okay, they make those statements. So I was immediately questioning, even in 1997, there I was 98, 99, those years, like, well, it's very clear, and you can't like bluff around this. Anyone can read it. It's a BBT book. Prabhupada was extremely concerned because he thought he was being homicidally poisoned. I would say he knew he was being homicidally poisoned, but at least he thought he was being homicidally poisoned. Those around him, including Tamal Krishna Goswami, Bhakti True Swami, Bhavananda, the Kavras, those around him were expressing in English. They knew that Prabhupada was concerned with being homicidally poisoned. Okay, so it was clear to them then. Then what makes it so ludicrous 20 years later? Completely, what made it so ludicrous? The only attempt at an explanation that we hear from ISKCON leadership that I've heard, and it's right there in their book, not that I was poisoned, from the year 2000, is essentially they're saying, well, Srila Prabhupada, he was kind of like elderly Bengali. He was kind of, they're saying he was kind of senile. So, I think, believe any sincere. I mean, it's painful for me to say that narrative, but that's the only explanation I've heard from ISKCON leadership. So, of course, in those same days when Prabhupada was so-called senile and just blabbering about being poisoned, he was also giving lucid Bhagavatam purports with the most precise, subtle, deep, philosophical import. Hare Krishna.
Mm. Thank you, Prabhu, for that. I listened to the audio file. If I'm honest, of all the information on your website, the first thing I did was listen to the audio file before I read the letter and before I read everything else, because I learn well by listening or watching. I'm quite a visual person, yeah, if I'm honest, I felt quite sad and emotional at least 15 or 16 minutes into the recording, because I just felt so sad, even though that Prabhupada's disappearance is a pastime, it's transcendental. I still felt a sense of sadness and distress and quite angry. And I messaged a friend of mine who also just listened to it to say, look, and this person also felt the same, sad and distressed and worried, angry, all those emotions you get when you love someone, you care for someone. And as much as I can, I care for Prabhupada, I serve Prabhupada, I love Prabhupada. So I obviously felt quite distressed listening to this recording, particularly when you hear that the tone of the voices so crass and rude and laughing and joking, like it, you know and I will give there will be a link to the recording of the audio file with this podcast, so listeners and viewers can listen to it for themselves and make their own judgments. Even though it's pretty much there, and it's fantastic that the people that have made this audio file clear for us to listen to, so we can hear the voices. And even despite the passing of time, we can still recognize some of those voices as well. Particularly those of us well, not me, others who have been around the movement for a long time, and will know what these devotees sound like. And just, I think you might have mentioned it, but people will see, or sorry, they'll hear when they listen to it. The audio file is a collection of recordings over several days, isn't it?
Correct. It's different,
and
different excerpts.
Yeah, and all around during November 1977.
Correct.
All taking place, I believe, in Prabhupada's personal room in Vrindavan.
Correct.
Yeah, just for that context. But I mean, so hopefully people listening to this podcast will listen to that audio file. Okay.
I'll mention Narada.
Yeah.
When you started what you just said with you said, to be honest, the first thing I looked at was the audio file, because you relate to audio visual. So I'll say I'm very happy about that, because my view is that's the most important thing, more important than a letter from me or even the forensic report or the lawyer. And I believe that's all very, very important to understand the truth about Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. But because what you said, that the first thing you listen to, for me, that's success, because primarily we want people, Prabhupada's followers in the whole world, to hear from Srila Prabhupada. Hear from Srila Prabhupada about his departure pastime, because, as I said, my sense from ISKCON GBC going back at least to 1997, well, actually before, but 97 is practically everything coming from them related to this seems to be deception, concealment, cover-up, lying. And the main thing that they've been trying to do with success is to prevent Prabhupada's followers from hearing directly from Srila Prabhupada. So I want people to go to this audio-visual text presentation as quickly as possible. Hear directly from Srila Prabhupada's transcendental vibration. And what you said, that of course, transcendental pastime, same time, that's not meant that we become callous to very real human emotion. And what you shared, that especially the tone of voices, and like this kind of laughing ridicule, whoa, that I kind of felt resonant, that when I was at that in-person GBC meeting, everything was in person in those days, early in the year 2000, from like practically, if not everyone in that room, especially the presenters of the presentation, that's what I felt like. This is very inappropriate, and just there was like ghoulish, and it pained me. And so thanks for sharing.
No problem. No worries. Okay. We've still got a few things to go over left on the list of discussion. The next one is, so we've discussed the audio file. We've discussed the forensic report. I then want to discuss what you did with that information. You sought legal advice following on from the audio file release and the forensic report. You've also sought professional legal opinion on whether these pieces of evidence can be used in the Indian legal system, as to whether they are helpful in a potential criminal investigation. What did that legal advice say?
Okay, yeah, and right there, in the link to the letter, the legal the legal entity is Garg and Garg Associates, and Mr. Ajay Garg, and just he's argued many cases in the Supreme Court of India, the High Court of Delhi. So just like the forensic team is like extraordinarily highly experienced and effective and successful, similarly with the legal team. And basically they looked at the forensic report from from Truth Labs, the audio, the toxicology evidence, in the very brief 2-page legal report that, or legal, not report, the legal opinion
Mm.
that we attach to the September 16th letter. Mr. Ajay Garg, a highly experienced lawyer, he says clearly, and I'm not a trained lawyer, so I don't claim to understand all the legal language or the nuances of the legal system in Florida, what to speak of India. But from what I understand from Ajay Garg, he said, yeah, this evidence is the foundation for a strong case in the Indian courts for a case of homicide by poisoning. That's essentially the conclusion.
Thank you. And I admit it was the legal letter that I read second after I listened to the audio file, because I wanted to get to the conclusion straight away. So what's happening? What's happening now? And I've highlighted some parts of the legal letter that I'm just going to read very briefly. I've just seen some other things. I'd love to read the whole thing, but I'm not, because people listening or watching this can read it for themselves. But just some things I really want to bring out. It says in the legal letter, so this is the legal opinion, professional lawyer, after listening to the audio file and reading the forensic report. The enhanced audio recordings and the transcripts clearly establish 4 material facts which lead to the inference that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned. So, number one, in his last days in 1977, Srila Prabhupada shared his apprehension with the caretakers or attendants that he was being poisoned. Number two, his caretakers or attendants accepted the possibility of Srila Prabhupada being poisoned.
Yeah.
Number three,
I referenced that a few minutes ago. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then number three, the caretakers or attendants took this poisoning issue very casually. And instead of taking steps like checking his food, drinks, and medicines, getting his blood checked, or calling the police, rather than that, they were gossiping about stories of poisoning of acharyas or gurus and other people in the past, just kind
Mm-hmm.
of casually brushing it off. Oh, if someone I was caring for, or a
Yeah.
friend, or a parent, or a grandparent, I thought had been poisoned,
Yeah.
I'd probably like call the police or
Sure.
something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Or if it was a care company or whatever, I'd ring the director or the manager. What the hell is going on? I
Yeah.
wouldn't have a joke and a laugh about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then I just want to highlight some other things further down the letter that the legal opinion does highlight, is besides the above. The forensic reports by Truth Lab also identifies the voices of the key caretakers and attendants who were identified as Tamal, Bhavananda, Bhaktacharoo, Jayapataka, and Kaviraj. And they are clearly the suspected persons who can be involved in poisoning Srila Prabhupada as per the audio recordings. That is the professional legal opinion. And then the final part of the legal opinion, which is really important. Therefore, we are of the firm opinion that the enhanced audio recordings and the forensic report on the same are a vital piece of evidence and can be helpful in initiating criminal investigation against the culprits who were involved in committing the heinous crime of poisoning Srila Prabhupada, and to unravel the larger conspiracy behind this. It's quite heavy wording, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. It is.
Particularly as the legal opinion, it names the potential suspects in a criminal investigation. And just not for context, I guess just for information, of those 5 names mentioned, which of the 5, how many are still on the planet, are still alive physically? Is it just 2?
Yes. Well, my understanding is that Jayapataka Swami and Bhavananda Prabhu are still alive. I don't know whether the Kaviraj is still alive. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, that was the only name I didn't know so well or recognize. And I was talking to actually a godbrother of mine yesterday about this podcast, and he also wasn't aware of who Kaviraj was or is either. But
Well, I'll say
so
Kaviraj, my understanding, the Kaviraj is not like an initiated disciple of Prabhupada. The Kaviraj meant like an Ayurvedic doctor who was attending to Srila Prabhupada. So like he wasn't like part of Prabhupada's movement. It's like that's his like title, like we would say the doctor. So
okay,
it's not like Kaviraj Das or Kaviraj Goswami. It's like the Kaviraj could be translated as the doctor who was one of the doctors who was attending to Prabhupada, and his voice is there in the audio recording. So that's why probably no one will know who that Kaviraj is unless someone like very involved in Vrindavan there late in 1977.
hmm. So so what happens now? My next question: what happens now? What does the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation want to see come from this?
Okay, what happens now? Well, at the core and foundation, I'll say what I want, and others, connected with Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation, at least in large respects, I think that they will resonate with. I say, well, in the most basic way, I want Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation wants the truth about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime to be known by the world, including, of course, by those who identify with the ISKCON organization, including and especially those serving in positions of leadership in the organization and those sincerely serving Prabhupada, and the whole world to know the truth about Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. Okay, then what? Okay, well, okay, but on the foundation of that, then what? All right, that's another discussion. I'm glad to go to that. But for me, it's like first, let's get the truth known. And again, and in one sense, I'm not meaning to overemphasize the disappearance pastime. Like we talked about Jesus and the disappearance pastime. I think my point of view is at least some groups of Christians, they'll tend to overemphasize the disappearance pastime. What I mean is like Jesus died on the cross for my sins. So that, I mean, Jesus is amazingly transcendental, but that's sometimes used, Jesus's departure pastime is used as an excuse to not do my work. or I kind of like to hear more about Jesus dancing in
Mm,
kirtan of the names of God. I think there tends to be an over, so I don't want to overemphasize Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. At the same time, all of Prabhupada's pastimes are completely transcendental, whether leading Ratha at 5 years old in Calcutta or rising at 1 a.m. to give us his glorious Bhaktivedanta purport, or letters where he lovingly chastises disciples, or his profound humility. We went all about Prabhupada's pastime, all of it. And with the disappearance pastime, there's been bluff, lying, concealment, and deception. For me, that's clear. And for me, that represents a whole other category of evidence. Like in addition to the toxicology and the audio and Prabhupada's own words and the words of those around him and the poison whispers and the medical toxicology and the forensic psychology, which we haven't really brought out yet, but it's there. Okay, but just the fact that the ISKCON leadership, the ISKCON GBC, so involved in cover-up, that's a whole nother category of evidence. It would be actually, I'm not a legal professional, but my understanding, like if one is covering up a crime and benefiting from that cover-up, I think the legal term, at least in the United States, that's called being an accessory to murder. That's my understanding. So just like, let's say narrative, let's say if the conception about Prabhupada was, yes, he amassed a fortune of $50 million and he flew on his private jet to Los Angeles and started the Hare Krishna movement. So Krishna and Prabhupada could co-create that, but they didn't. We know. No, he was penniless. He had the rupee equivalent of $7, and he got on a cargo ship called the Jaladuta, had 2 heart attacks, and etc. And he went through Butler, Pennsylvania, then the Lower East Side. So that's Prabhupada. That's the pastime about Prabhupada's coming to the West. So with the disappearance pastime, there's just been so much diversion and deception and concealment. So I simply want the disappearance pastime in all its truth to be revealed. And in that way, for Prabhupada's glories to be exponentially more broadcast and known and appreciated throughout the world. Okay, now, so that's my essential response to your question. Sure, 1977, it's an attempt to poison Srila Prabhupada's Vapu. Yeah, sure. Since 1977, these 47 years, there's been intensive and extensive attempts, largely successful, to poison Srila Prabhupada's Vani, and that's a tragedy for the planet. And sure, I'd like that we clean up that whole mess, but that's after. Let's get the truth known about the disappearance pastime. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for Prabhu. I really appreciate that. And I know our viewers will appreciate that. Just out of interest, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, or maybe you will. Have you received any responses over the last week? Have you heard from any people in positions of leadership in ISKCON in response to your letter?
Okay. Okay. We've received many responses, several of them real similar to the response that you shared a few minutes ago. Like, whoa, yeah, I probably the most emotional responses were to those who carefully listened to the 22-minute video, audio, text presentation. Some responded just like you. They were so painful for them. Some said painful, sad. Some said anger. And so we're getting a lot of responses like that. We're getting, yes, a lot of responses like that. Okay. I can say we've received some response from followers of Prabhupada serving in positions of leadership in ISKCON. Some response like very moved, not something where like we have permission to share the names or something.
That's okay. Yep.
Yeah. But we've received some. In the letter itself, we asked that and I'll say we sent the letter, as you said, to hundreds of leaders in the ISKCON organization internationally. And I'll mention it was like right after we sent the letter, same day, I think it was exactly the same day or within 24 hours, I personally sent a letter to the current members of the GBC Executive Committee from my personal email, just to the 3 of them, just saying, here's a letter, and just so in case, we didn't get, like, it's from my personal email. And we asked in our September 16th letter that the GBC Executive Committee at least acknowledges receipt of the letter before October 2nd, 2024, and that they give us a response before November 1st, 2024. So we I'll say we have not received any acknowledgement of receipt from any member of the GBC Executive Committee, or I'll say from any member of the ISKCON GBC. We have not received, at least till now, any acknowledgement. No response, no reaction, but no acknowledgement from any letters of the GBC. And we ask that they send an acknowledgement. We received it before October 2nd. So we haven't received that yet. So we haven't received any response, reaction, or recognition of receipt from any member of the ISKCON GBC. From some others in positions of leadership in ISKCON, we have, and they've expressed similarly, like being moved emotionally, especially from the audio recording. And we've received like a lot of appreciation, like we really appreciate that you're challenging the silence, you're challenging the taboo, like that.
Thank you for that, and I'm completely aware that you can and probably shouldn't share those names because uh, hopefully the responses that you receive, you can enter into dialogue with them and
Yeah.
converse with them, and this hopefully will be the start of something. And we know with any institution things take time,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be the start of something to get this at least maybe even discussed again one day at the GBC. But I've been very impressed by, I think, the level of the campaign from the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation. And you talk in your letter about kind of media action as well. And I've been quite impressed by how kind of targeted your campaign has been. You really did your research in terms of who should receive the letter. How can we get maximum exposure about this campaign to raise awareness of this particular issue? So I take my hat off to you and Naveen Krishna Prabhu for doing that. It's as someone who works in PR and marketing, I find it quite impressive. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing this. It's encouraging for me to hear, and I'm sure it'll be encouraging for others on the team to hear. Yeah, we've endeavored to create and communicate and move forward with attention to detail and commitment to excellence, just like Srila Prabhupada would want.
The final question I have for you, the final question I have for you is in your letter, the letter that's been sent out to lots of leaders, you indicate that some people might identify or recognize that there is a link between um, Srila Prabhupada's poisoning with homicidal intent and child abuse in ISKCON.
Yeah.
Um, that was kind of mentioned in the letter. Can you kind of maybe elaborate on that a bit?
Okay. Yeah. Well, as we say in the letter, it's kind of well known, and from efforts like yours and podcasts like yours, it's become more well known, especially the past 4 or 5 years, about the terrible problem that ISKCON has suffered and experienced related to extreme severe child maltreatment and child abuse, and I will say even worse, the extensive attempts by persons in leadership position all the way to the top international leadership to cover up the child abuse, even to promote it, I mean that's why in 1998 they formed and in this Central Office of Child Protection. They asked me to be the director, this and that, and so ISKCON experienced a lot of problems there, and the worst problems about concealment and cover-up of child abuse in ISKCON, and child abuse, including sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, has been in ISKCON Mayapur. I resigned from directorship of Child Protection Office in 2004 So in the 20 years since then, it's been the mess has continued in catastrophic, tragic ways. In different articles, the different youth have spoken up. No, we won't go into the details, but just been terrible. All right. So it just so happens, and I don't know if maybe it's random chance or maybe it's not random chance, that the four prime suspects in the homicidal poisoning of Srila Prabhupada also all all of them from the late 70s till the present time, all four of them have been and are highly influential influencers in ISKCON Mayapur. And all of them served for extensive years as GBCs for ISKCON Mayapur. Now we know that one of the suspects departed in 2002, another departed in 2020. They also, though, I mean, it could arguably be said that those four prime suspects, meaning you mentioned five, so I'm mentioning the four other than the Kaviraj, the doctor. Those four prime suspects have been the four most influential persons in ISKCON Mayapur for this period since the late 70s till now. And this period while okay, like the terrible abusers and those who are supervising the abuse, there'd be investigations from my office, or even before I came to this country, in the 80s and early 90s, there was extensive investigation quality investigation. And the main perpetrator and supervising the neglect and the violence to children and the sexual perversions against children. So the main person involved in supervising it was removed. And then mystically, 3 months later, when the investigators went away, he was put back by the GBCs. When I was there, we cleaned it up to a large extent. We really did. And then the same persons are put back. Now, when you get to your 6th, 7th, 8th cycle of the same thing, it's actually like those who are kind of the top leaders in, let's say, a country with a functional justice system, they would certainly spend time in prison. Now, those top leaders who are responsible for this aim, child abusers, to be put back in position again and again. Now, they happen to be the four suspects in the homicidal poisoning of Srila Prabhupada. Maybe it's a coincidence and there's no there's no connection, but these are some facts. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dhira Govinda Prabhu. That, I think, nicely concludes our discussion today. Believe it or not, we've been recording this podcast for an hour, 45 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Hour and a half. And it's been really, I have found it useful to talk to you about this really important topic. And I hope that as a result of the creation of the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation, as a result of your Naveen Krishna Prabhu's letter, as a result of this podcast, and as a result of other lobbyists, a bit of a political term, of other lobbyists in the Hare Krishna movement, people will start to talk about this, and it will have a domino effect. Maybe similar to what we've seen with the child protection campaign over the last 4 or 5 years. People start to talk about it, and then all of a sudden things, more and more people talk about it, and more and more and more. And I hope that this happens with this. So people watching or viewing this podcast, do not forget that all the links to the evidence the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation provides is on their website, and there'll be a link with this recording to the website, and also I'll put the individual links as well to the pages on the website, so it's crystal clear what the evidence is. You can listen to the audio file. You can read the forensic reports. You can read the legal opinion. And you can also make decisions for yourself. I'm massively in favor of people making their own mind up about things. But please come at this with a very open mind, and just listen. Just listen to the audio file. And I think also, I mean, I haven't checked on this with Dhira Govinda Prabhu, but if you want to help with the campaign, I'm sure that the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation would really like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes,
because
true.
there's a lot of work to be done,
There
isn't
is.
there?
It's
Lot,
true.
lots of people to email, lobbying to do.
Hmm.
You know, we want Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime to become a key discussion point
Mm.
in the Hare Krishna movement. Um, so hopefully that will come from this.
Thank you, Narada. I share the hopes you just expressed, and I appreciate this opportunity to discuss with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhira Govinda Prabhu. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers at home or wherever they listen, and you and I can have a very brief debrief after. So a big thank you to Dhira Govinda Prabhu for being our 142nd guest on the Hare Krishna Project podcast. Do not forget, if you're listening to this on YouTube, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button. And also, if you're watching or listening to this on Facebook, to like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page, so you can be kept updated about all the things we do at the Hare Krishna Project. As you know, we do produce this podcast, as you can see, but also we do other things. We do books distribution, we organize events, Hare Krishna festivals, all those things that keep me out of trouble, causing more mischief, you know. So you can keep updated about what we're doing that way. As always, I say this at the end of every recording, I love to receive constructive feedback. I like it when people have their own opinions. I quite like that. And I encourage that as well. But when you send your feedback, make it constructive feedback. What do you want to know more of, or what do you want to hear from? And I'm sure, I'm 99% sure that you can contact Dhira Govinda Prabhu directly through the Justice for Srila Prabhupada website.
True, true,
Yeah.
true. Also, I don't know if I should say this, but people can write to me email. Like you have my email address. If you want to share my email for people who express sincere interest to dialogue with me, give me honest feedback. Um, they can write to me. I'll be responsive by email and also through the website. Yes, so
Yeah.
I'm ready to be accessible. I'm glad to be available and accessible for hearing and discussion.
Thank you, Prabhu. If I will make sure that your email address is made available to those who want to communicate with you. Okay. Until next week, I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.